Hi everybody, this is Mr. Zoeller, and today I'll be presenting a screencast to you on the acquisition of Texas to the United States as part of Chapter 15 on westward expansion. So to start off, our essential question that we'll be discussing about in class was how justifiable was the United States expansion in the 1800s, and we'll be focusing on how the United States was able to acquire Texas and whether you feel the U.S. did have the correct reasons and means to be able to do that. So to start off about Texas, Moses Austin, who's an American, is going to ask to receive a land grant from the Spanish, and he's going to get approval for that. So he dreamed of starting an American colony in Texas and having families moving there. And on his way back, Moses Austin got really sick, and then his son had to end up taking over. And then in 1821, we're going to have Mexico declaring its independence from Spain. And so Stephen Austin's going to have to go to Mexico City in order to get that land grant. And so Mexico said that, yes, the Austin and other families could live in Texas as a colony. He had to make sure that the families moving in were going to be hard workers, following moral codes and being good people. And they also had to promise to become Mexican citizens, not Americans, learning the language, so learning Spanish, writing in Spanish, and also joining the Catholic Church. And then eventually Mexico is also going to ban slavery, and we'll find out that that's going to cause a problem for future people coming to Texas. And so by 1827, we're going to have about 297, almost 300 families that ended up moving to Texas. And this was part of that original group that were hard workers and were going to live in this colony. Over time, we're going to have, as news spreads in the United States about Texas as this land of opportunity and for farming and agriculture, there's going to be a lot more people that are moving to Texas, more than the Mexican government had thought in the beginning. And we're also going to have, there's Texans that are living in Texas as well from Mexican descent called the Tejanos, and there'll be some conflicts between the Tejanos and the Texans in regards to these new Texans coming in that are not following the regulations that Stephen Austin and the other 297, 300 families originally had. So over time, Americans are going to resent taking orders from the Mexican officials. They do not want all the documents to be in Spanish. And when Mexico outlaws slavery in 1829, that's going to make a lot of these Texans upset because they had dreams of growing their own plantations, growing cotton, bringing slaves in and being able to make a profit, and now they're told they cannot bring their slaves with them. And so the Mexican Texans were unhappy. They're coming into Texas illegally, even after Mexico closes the border between Texas and the United States. And a lot of the Americans moving in, the future Texans, are not being very respectful to the Mexican government and the regulations that they needed to follow. And so, as I said, the Mexican government is going to close the border to the United States, and so Texas is closed. So to try to ease some of the tension, Stephen Austin is going to travel to Mexico City, and the letter reaches him about a plan to make Texas a separate Mexican state so that the Texans could run their own government, their own affairs. But his original purpose was just to try to negotiate with Mexico to clear up some of the differences between them, but that letter is going to be intercepted by the Mexican government, and so General Santa Anna, who is going to be in charge of Mexico, is going to throw Austin in jail, saying he's promoting rebellion. And in response to this, by 1835, the Texans are going to rise up in revolt, in revolution against Mexico, and they're fighting for their independence. They want to govern themselves, create their own laws in similar fashion to the Americans against the British. The first major clash in this Texas War for Independence, as it's known, is going to take place at an old Spanish mission called the Alamo. And so in 1836, General Santa Anna is going to lead an army of 6,000 soldiers to San Antonio, and there's going to be 180 Texans, including frontiersman Davy Crockett, that had taken over in an old mission. And over the course of 12 days, General Santa Anna's troops are going to surround this old mission. The Texans send messages to other towns asking for reinforcements, asking for more Texans to come and defend, and vowing that they weren't going to give up, they weren't going to surrender, that they were going to fight to the very end. And the Mexicans began attacking the fort with their cannons, and then in the end, an hour and a half later, about 90 minutes, That battle is over, and all of the Texans are killed. And General Santa Anna orders that all the men that are defending the Alamo, those that were not dead yet but wounded or injured, that they were all to be put to death for rising up against Mexico. So the women and children were spared, and there was one American who was able, or Texan, I'm sorry, who was able to get away and be able to tell the tale of what happened here. And so Mexico was hoping, General Santa Anna, I should say, was hoping that by showing a strong response to this rebellion of killing and executing all these Texans that are in rebellion, that it would cause the other Texans to step down and to give in to Mexican demands. But it's going to make things a lot worse. So we're going to have more and more Texans that are going to rise up and fight against the Mexican government. You're going to have the cheer many of you might have heard of, "Remember the Alamo! Remember the Alamo!" and "Remember Goliad!" and other battles that are taking place, and that they're not going to forget the lives and sacrifices of their fellow Texans. And so Sam Houston is going to end up commanding this Texas Revolutionary Army. You might have noticed that in the names Austin, Stephen Austin, Sam Houston, so Houston, Texas, Austin, Texas, named after these gentlemen. His hope is to, so here's the battle where the Alamo took place in 1836. So his hope is to head further to the east. Since General Santa Anna's army is much larger, has artillery, it's going to take him longer to reach them. He also needs to get resupplied, supply lines to reach him. So he thought the further east he moved, the harder it would be for General Santa Anna to keep his army supplied with weapons and food and ammunition and things like that. And so when General Santa Anna finally caught up, they stayed up all night expecting an attack by Sam Houston. And so the next day, as the Mexican army was relaxed, taking a nap, Sam Houston is going to lead the army and attack at the Battle of San Jacinto, and that's going to lead to the Mexican army being routed, running away, and then the next day General Santa Anna is going to be captured, and in exchange for his freedom, he promises to order all the troops out of Texas and to allow the Texans to have their own nation, the Republic of Texas, even though it's not an official treaty, because then we'll find out the Mexican government's not going to honor this deal that was made between the Texans and General Santa Anna. So Texas is going to become known as the Lone Star Republic, so it's their own separate country. And this is the state flag of Texas today, and this was the flag of the Lone Star Republic, so you got the one star there on the flag. It's going to remain independent for 10 years. A lot of the Texans were hoping that they would be brought into the United States. That's called annexation, or being annexed in, so just becoming a part of a family, joining the United States as a family. But the United States is not so eager to allow Texas. So members of the Congress are worried that if Texas is allowed to enter in as a state, that's going to add to the number of slave states in the United States, giving them more power in the U.S. Senate. And so Northerners in the Congress want to keep Texas out, while Southerners want to add Texas because they're hoping to spread slavery there. And that's why a lot of the Americans went into Texas in the first place. And so in the presidential election in 1844, the whole idea of expanding slavery and what should happen with Texas is at the forefront, and President Polk is going to be elected president, and then he's going to ask Congress later to annex Texas. And so in 1845, Texas will become the 28th state in the Union in the United States of America, and it will become a slave state. And here you can see Texas being added, the area that it has. So the main thing you need to know about Texas, class, is that originally it was a part of Mexico. It was a colony that Americans were allowed to come in, and over time there were disagreements between the Texans and Mexicans leading to a Revolutionary War. The Texans fought and were able to capture the leader of Mexico, General Santa Anna, and to earn their independence. And the big question facing the United States is, do we allow Texas to be added? If we do, it's going to add another slave state, and the United States is also worried that if Texas is annexed or brought into the United States, that would lead to a declaration of war of Mexico, since Mexico feels like the United States is taking this colony from them. You can check out the other videos on Chapter 15 on westward expansion at the end of this video. And this is Mr. Zoeller signing out. Have a good day.